Okay, so this lesson is about testing software and testing applications. So we'll look at the purpose of testing and why you do it. And then we'll identify the two different types of testing that we're going to go through in this course. So the purpose of testing is not quite as simple as you might have imagined. Obviously, you test to make sure that it meets the requirements and that the software does what it is supposed to do. And you obviously try to ensure that it has as few bugs as possible. Hopefully you get none, but that might not be achievable because of different hardware and stuff. You want to make sure that the program is easy to use as possible. You want to ensure that it includes features that users might want. You might not know what the users want as much as you think. Okay, if you're making an art program, there might be a feature that you have missed out or that you've buried between three menu options, and people are like, I click that 25,000 times a day, put a button, put a shortcut, or other things like that. And you want to make sure you optimize it to run as fast as it can. Now, this is I've put if required because a lot of apps may not require optimization. If you're making a very basic calculator app, you pretty much don't need to worry about optimization unless you're doing something very wrong with it, but then there'll be a bigger issue. So let's look at the types of testing then. So the first one is iterative testing, and that basically means testing the code as you create it. So this could be testing the code line by line or section at a time. So once testing and feedback is received, you then alter and improve the code as required. So this kind of in my head is sort of really two different things where you're testing the code as you write it in terms of, does this code do what I want? But then there's also sections. So let's say, for example, you were making a calculator app, for example, you would check that the buttons are being correctly inputted. So you would check that the numbers, type in as you go. Then you would check a few simple sums like does plus work, does times work, does divide work, things like that. So you would test little sections of the code at a time, as well as testing line by line as you create it. So it's not just line by line, it's section as well. So testing as you go, basically. Final testing is obviously the opposite. It's also called terminal testing because terminal means the end as well, terminate. So it's where you test at the end of the program, similar to a GCSE exam. You do it right at the end to make sure the program is working properly. Very important tests because as you test as you go along, you might sometimes test different sections and then when you put them together, they mess each other up. Second of all, there's lots of different hardware out there, so you need to do lots of testing at the end to make sure that it works as intended for all users. So let's go through an example of one sort of question you might get in an exam. Alex is creating a fitness app. It calculates the best routes, calories used, distance in steps and kilometers. To describe the testing he does. Right, so here is some iterative tests he complete. I didn't put the ones about testing the code as you go. Obviously, you could just put that each line, but that's kind of implied. So obviously, you can check that, say he tests the code each line as he writes it. But I thought I'd put the more interesting ones. So you check the routing function works. So you would literally check, put in some routes, test them. Does it give you correct routes that are comparable to other apps or real life assessment? Same with the calories used. You put in a fake workout or whatever, or thousands of them, and then you check them compared to other apps, to check them compared to sort of your own calculations. You check them to any science you can find. And this is pretty much the same sort of thing really here. You do some walking. You literally do some walking and check the distance in steps and kilometers matches what your app is doing, within some degree of accuracy. Another one is you could have a group look at the application early stages. So you could have people look at it as you go, like have some come in really early and check the user interface. You don't have to wait till the end to do this sort of stuff. You could do it as you go. So that's your iterative tests. Then your final testing, you could use the app, a week individually. You could hire some testers to rigorously go through the application systematically. And what I mean by that is that they would have like a schedule to go through every single part of the app and literally perform tests on it. So they are they're not just using the app, they're actually going through and systematically trying every option or every, as many as they can, and keeping a list of all the things that worked and didn't work and all the improvements that could be made. And then you can give out the app to early beta testers to use and suggest improvements. So people would try the app out in real life situations and then see how it goes. So that's some final tests that you can perform. So what you've got to do now is answer the questions here. So I'm not going to allow any copy and pasting. If you do, I'm just going to delete your PowerPoint. I want short written answers from my video. If I literally think it's copy and pasted, I'm just going to literally delete it. And then I'm going to write on the spreadsheet you didn't do it because there's so much copying and pasting going on when in reality, I do very short lessons compared to some of the other teachers. This video is going to be like 6 minutes and this takes about 6 minutes. So you've got a lesson that doesn't even take 30 minutes, which is half the time of your, actually it's less than half because you have 2.5 hours a week and I do like 2 30-minute activities. So you've got a nice easy one. So look, describe the main purpose of testing. All of the stuff is on the slides. So you can go back in the video and just copy bits out. You even shorten it. I'm quite happy to see you shorten it. I'd rather you copied out my stuff. Now, I know you might think, what's the point? But when you copy it, you've got to read it. So I know you've all read it if you've written it down. So yeah, there you go. So answer those out. Obviously, there's a little one here. There's a question to answer in these boxes. The terminal tests are going to be quite similar to the ones in the other one, so not too difficult there. Obviously, the iterative tests will be different because you're testing different bits. But I suppose you could get experts here in language to look at your apps. So there's another suggestion for you. So yeah, there you go.